Okay, welcome everybody to the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. We're going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Here.
Alderman Blanton is absent. Alderman Caesar.
Present.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Vice Mayor Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor are all here. Next item is citizen comments for items not on the agenda. I have no speaker cards for that. We'll keep moving along, and we're glad to welcome Tracy Gale from the Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery for a brief presentation. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Alderman, thank you for having me tonight. In the way that you serve your community, I serve with the Office of Disaster Recovery. I've enjoyed my time here so far. I've got a few more months on site. And it's a sad reason that brought me here with the amount of damage you had with the ice storm, but I've loved every day of it. So thank you for all your hospitality. I want to take a quick minute, and I realize you have a very jam-packed work session, jam-packed agenda tonight. So I'm going to skip through a lot of the slides and just give you the high points. But I want to tell you that as a primary declaration county for this disaster, Winter Storm Fern, there are 3 programs available to your citizens. There's a lot of money available at very low interest rates, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. We have been on the ground here working Williamson County and Maury County, which is my other primary disaster declaration county, since April 16th. We will continue to do that. This is a wonderful opportunity to get the word out. If you have other options, or if you get phone calls from businesses or someone who hears about our program and you're like, I need to help this constituent, my contact information is on the second to the last slide here. I will be more than happy to call them back directly and then report back to you how that conversation went. So for the benefit of the people that are watching live tonight, I want to give this out before I begin. The phone number to start an application with for one of our programs is 1-800-659-2955. The other option, which, believe it or not, it's a federal website, but it's a very easy one. That's the believe it or not part, is lending.sba.gov. And anyone can go there, and then you click on the second column, which is check my eligibility. And when you click on that, it'll go to a page with a drop-down menu, and you pick Tennessee, and you're in. So that's how easy it goes. And I just wanted to share that before I get started. Okay, let me open the program, the PowerPoint for you.
Yeah, we purposely didn't let anybody look at this.
Okay. Wow.
Speaking.
So it's like
No,
Christmas.
I don't know why they put it that way. It is kind of odd, isn't it?
Okay, would like to do slideshow. Okay, well, we'll go with what we have. So, yeah, let's see, that should be okay. There we go. I'm going to skip that. Okay. So the types of disaster loans that we have available are you doing it for me or am I doing it?
I have not, so.
Okay. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. So we have disaster loans for homeowners and for renters. And before I joined SBA, I didn't realize that we have full benefits available for renters. I checked before I flew up here, and a high percentage of your residents are renters. So if, for example, their car or their truck was damaged by falling trees or something during the ice storm Fern, they're just as eligible as a business owner or a homeowner for benefits. We have home disaster loans, and we have mitigation assistance, and that's our Build Back Better program. So anyone that qualifies for a home loan with us, they can automatically get an extra 20% to get better clamps on their roof, get stronger windows, anything to help them protect themselves from the next event, whether it's a tornado, flooding, whatever. The other program we have, we've referred to as EIDL, and that's Economic Injury Disaster Loans. These are working capital loans for payroll, for maybe quarterly business taxes that they couldn't pay because January and February were a wash. Those loan programs usually are the bulk of our applicants because the requirements are much less, I don't say comprehensive, but they're much less they're much easier for an independent business owner to apply for than going through a bank. We have our loans are from the U.S. Treasury. They're not through any bank. They're not dealing with any bank. I wanted to share with you the loan limits. So businesses, nonprofits, including churches, up to $2 million for grounds and building damage. For small businesses and private nonprofits, again, up to $2 million. Individual homeowners can get $500,000 to repair their property. Now, this is really let's look at this money as a tool in your toolkit. Okay, it's the kind of money where while you're waiting for your insurance payout, or maybe I had one gentleman in Maury County with a barbecue restaurant, and he had just bought a new refrigerator for his business. It was like 2 months old, and his insurance is only paying 30% of the value. So because of that, he's taking an idle loan while he negotiates with the insurance. So I look at especially the idle program as just kind of like a tool in the recovery toolbox. You can apply for the money, there's no charge to apply, and you don't have to take it. If ultimately you settle with your insurance or you're good, it doesn't go against your credit, you don't have to take the money. Renters can get $100,000 for damages that they sustain to their, if they are renting a condominium and their business, their office equipment got damaged, even though that they're renting, it's still a perfectly legitimate reason to apply. They also can get money, like I said, for their vehicles outside the property, and the owner of that condo can also apply. There can be 2 applications for the same building. And then the mitigation, I mentioned that earlier, that's Build Back Better. That's up to 20% to build back their home or business stronger. So we have low fixed interest rates. Our program gives 12 months with no repayment and 12 months with no interest accruing. We want businesses and homeowners to get back on their feet and get 100% before they have to worry about paying us back. They can pick their time to repay. They have up to 30 years, and there's no prepayment penalty. Loans can be used for relocation. I mentioned the renters. If for some reason the owner of the property has not maybe fulfilled the requirements of the lease to their level of comfort and safety, they can use the money as down payments for a new rental. Businesses are eligible for both 2 types of loans, the physical disaster loan and the EIDL program. And like I said, there's no obligation to take a loan if they've been approved. Does anybody have any questions so far? Are we good? Okay. These are the loan and insurance requirements. These are discussed when they apply. We have really, and I say this from the bottom of my heart as someone who tried to make a return today over at the Galleria Mall, we have really empathetic customer service representatives. They are really helpful. They'll stay on the phone for an hour if they need to make sure the person understands. And I'm really proud of them. The EIDL loans can, like I said, can be used for rent, utilities, taxes, payroll, healthcare benefits, fixed debt, marketing. I have a list on here of what they can't be used for. Again, that is explained in detail if they when they apply. So this is just an example. Our loans are direct deposited just like a refund on your taxes. Money comes from the Treasury, which is very quick. Once you submit a completed application, we're averaging 10 to 15 business days to get the money deposited to applicants. Applicants can apply even if they still have a COVID loan out, businesses. And just a note, disaster loans cannot be consolidated. There's my name, my number, and my email. I'm available 7 days a week. So again, if you have a comment from one of your constituents, alderman, I'll be very happy to help them and then let you know how the conversation is handled. I want to give out, again, just for the benefit of those people listening, because it's very small on here. It's 1-800-659-2955 or lending.sba.gov. And again, there's 12 months with no payments due, 12 months with no interest accruing. And those who apply, it doesn't affect credit rating, and you don't have to take the money, and it's free to apply. So if you do have a need, Williamson County residents, certain areas here were hit very hard, and I just want to encourage you to consider it. The loans start at 2.8%. So I heard a wow. Yeah. Again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody? Sure.
Curious, there were HOAs that had to put off pretty critical projects because the cost of the disaster relief used up the funds they would have
Right.
normally used for fence repair or crosswalks, whatever else. Can an HOA, I'm not saying they would, but could an HOA? No.
No, it has to be an individual homeowner or an individual, oh, you're doing that. I thought I was leaning on the mouse. I'm like, oh, I'm making a very bad mess here. It has to be an individual homeowner or an individual business owner.
Gotcha.
That is probably my most common question,
Yeah.
yeah. Debris removal, HOA, that's, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your
Thank
bringing
you for
that
having me.
information. Okay, Innovation Center presentation. Jeremy Qualls and Chris Snyder.
Good evening, Board. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We are super excited to present shortly and briefly to you guys what kind of project we have going in the workforce development world, in the world of schools. I know most of you, in case you don't, I'm Jeremy Qualls, and this is my colleague, Chris Schneider. 2021, the Innovative School Models Grant was dropped by Governor Bill Lee, and $500 million were earmarked and allocated for public schools to innovate in the world of college, career, and technical education. For us, that's CTE in short. And we sat around and tried to think up a good innovative project to do. After lots of caffeine and a couple of napkins that we drew this thing on, we came up with the Innovation Center. Currently at the EIC, if any of you have ever been to the Entrepreneurial Center, the EIC stands for Entrepreneurship Innovation Center. We decided to keep that nomenclature because everybody kind of, after 8 years of being open, knows where that is. So we decided to change that to the Entrepreneurship Innovation Campus, and we'll show you the location in just a moment. The current Entrepreneurship Center has been open for 8 years, and we're the reigning back-to-back national champions. We like to tout that, with hopes and fingers crossed that we will be the back-to-back-to-back champions in Chicago, where $25,000 is up for grabs for our students. We have students that are launching viable companies and getting into their dream schools because of the portfolio that they have built at the Entrepreneurship Center. And with that success, we thought, what would be the 2.0 of the Entrepreneurship Center? And that would be the new Innovation Center. The key to the Innovation Center success is the location of where it is going to be situated. It is in the old animal control facility that was at the corner of McHatcher and Hillsborough, behind the old annex of the Franklin High School. And that was the county property, and we got that. Mayor Anderson, and through some conversations, we were fortunate enough to get that piece of property and take that building down, and then we put up the new Innovation Center of where it's sitting now, behind, as you can see on the screen, behind the Entrepreneurship Center. We have 5 unique programs. I'm going to let Chris discuss with you a little bit about the programming.
So the 5 programmings, and this is our rendering from, I guess, 2021 when we started this project. The 5 programs that we're opening along with our current picture is going to be Advanced Power and Machinery. And to give you guys an idea of the enrollment and the success that we've had with the applications, our Advanced Power and Machinery program, we have 40 seats available and we had 110 students apply across the districts. In our aviation program, we have 205 seats available. We had 225 students apply. So as a side note, we will be the largest aviation high school program before even opening the doors in the state of Tennessee. In our cybersecurity and AI program, we have 100 seats available and we have 78 students that have applied. In our hospitality, tourism, and culinary program, we have 75 seats available and we have 55 that applied. And our last program is our fire management program. This one, I say we have 12 seats available and we may have accepted 24. We're going to talk about this program because we actually piloted this program this year. So I'm going to let Chief talk about that.
Well, thank you. We wouldn't be standing before you tonight if 2 years ago we hadn't come to you with a PER asking for you to support and back this new project that we thought would benefit our community and focus on our local talent to recruit and retain firefighters from right here locally. And so without your leadership and support, we wouldn't be here today. I'm going to keep my comments brief, but we have established a great relationship with the Williamson County School System, and it's been a great partnership. But the cornerstone of this program lies right here with Chris and with Lieutenant Wilson. They are the ones that have really put this thing together. Dr. Qualls and I just stand out of the way and let them do their thing. So that's what I'm going to do at this point.
Hey, Lieutenant Wilson, I guess the program coordinator for the fire management program. I kind of volunteered into something that I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. I just asked to help with the project and then ended up taking the whole thing on. At the beginning of school year, we didn't really have a direction of where the program was going to go. But we, through discussions, just kind of decided that we would run the high school classes similar to the way we run our recruit class. So our recruit class is 18 weeks for a new hire recruit, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. In turn, the high school program is a 9-month program, hour and a half a day, 5 days a week with some Saturdays sprinkled in. The kids go through the same training that our new hires go through. We're the 7th county school system in the state to have a fire management program. We're the only one in the state that's putting out state certified firefighter ones. We had 12 students this year, 2 were juniors, 10 were seniors. As of right now, we have 2 that have passed everything. Some others are waiting to do a retest. The test was a little bit harder than what they anticipated. But it's been a good program. We've got, out of the 11 high schools in the county, we've got 8 represented out of this class. And hopefully with your support, we can continue this program. Out of this program, we've made job offers to 3 of the students that will begin here in another month or so with our intern program with the fire department. So
that's our initial cohort, and we appreciate it so much. So with that, those are the 5 programs that will be opening at the Innovation Center in August. We're super excited. We're going to start hiring teachers in July and working with community colleges. Yes, you want to?
Yes, I just want to give a little bit more stats behind the premise of why we went with the Innovation Center. We took 100% of the funding. We were the only system in the state of Tennessee that used 100% of the funding for brick and mortar. We thought that was the best use of funding because it was $1 million per high school was the formula. And as you know, $1 million in technology and other things doesn't go as far as needed. And once you do buy those items, it goes out pretty quick. So we decided to use that $15.5 million to build a facility in the middle, in the heart of our county, so that every school in WCS could have access, including our partnership with Franklin Special, where they are feeding us, the aviation students, as part of the program. So, but the workforce development is the main goal here, just like the fire program. How do we help develop students to get jobs in this community and give back immediately? And we're super excited with our partnerships. She mentioned the advanced machinery. We have a partnership with Caterpillar, and it will also be the first location of a TCAT, a Tennessee College of Applied Technology in Williamson County history. They're going to help provide the instructor for that. So there's a lot of room here to grow communally with the community and with adults in mind for after hours later. But year one, we're going to start off almost at capacity, which a lot of people thought that we wouldn't. So we're super excited about it. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer those for you.
Okay, Alderman Berger.
Either one. Thank you. I was just looking at the different areas and cybersecurity. When they go through these programs then and they're graduating high school, do you help, some of them might go on to higher education, but do you help plug them into jobs, and how does that work? As far as job searches?
Great question.
For any of those areas?
So the kind of the motto that we've taken is we've built exit ramps for all the programs. It's not our job to decide what exit ramp a student takes. So we have a straight to work technical certificate embedded in every program. We have a 2-year college embedded in each of these programs, and a 4-year 2+2 program that they can go on. So it's up to them to do so. Yes, the job, we want to get jobs immediately to those students that choose to do so. And that's really why we had those workforce partners. That was super important to us to make sure that we have workforce partners embedded in each of these programs so that they have that opportunity to go straight to work if they choose to do so.
And can they also take the aviation for going into the military possibly? as well?
They can. Our particular program, don't let me misspeak.
Will they,
Is a private pilot license. It also has a unmanned aerial systems technical certificate embedded, and then they can make the choice on the back end whether they want to go to MTSU and follow that aviation pathway or go to the military and parlay that into that.
does this include any air traffic control at all?
It does. The initial program, the introduction course, covers air traffic control, unmanned aerial systems, private pilot, and commercial pilot. So they can kind of explore. Our job is just to educate them and make sure that they're set up for, I say, the future, whatever it brings for them.
So if you're training them and showing them different aspects of that, so if, say, someone comes out of that program and wants to do air traffic control, which we desperately need these days, do you help them to feed into another education system to help them get those certificates and qualifications?
Yes, currently there's one community college in the entire United States that offers an air traffic control associates. We are looking at other options, but then we've got some flight schools. I do think BNA will help us. Doug Krulin is on our advisory board, so I do think yes,
Yeah.
if there's an opportunity to teach them here in Tennessee, I think we'll try to keep them local. And we also want kids to realize they don't have to go to college to become successful workers.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Probably one of the more outspoken advocates for this program, watching both my son and other son go through this program and setting them up for success in college is great kudos to the two folks here from an education standpoint, and the work that you do and the passion you show up with every single day. It shows and it matters, and teachers matter a lot in our community. Even though we don't have a direct responsibility for schools, it's still great to see folks in our community thrive under the careful guidance of folks like you guys. And it makes me proud to see our firefighting team tagging along there and continuing to shape and develop the next generation. To me, this is, when I was growing up, this was shop class. Kids would go to shop and they'd learn how to do hands-on work with metal and work with tools, and they'd go out and have a trade. And today, we're teaching kids how to go out and fight cybersecurity and fight fires and fill gaps in the workforce that are desperately needed. So kudos for the forethought, for fighting the good fight and securing the funding and building this place. A few weeks ago, I was able to actually tour this new building. I don't know if I was supposed to be in there, had a hard hat, but it's spectacular. And you guys have done an outstanding job of putting together a place where kids can learn with excellent tools, skills that will allow them to go out immediately and start contributing to our community in a positive way. So great work. I know this is just the beginning. And for those who may be watching this, who are affiliated with a company that maybe is in the advanced power and machinery space. How critical are the corporate partnerships in making this idea come into reality?
It's a great question because without corporate sponsors, it's hypothetical. And we're not in the world of hypothetical. As you know, both your boys going through the Entrepreneur Center, we don't deal in hypotheticals. Everything is real. When you fail forward, you fail often, you learn from those failures. So our corporate sponsors are really what drive this whole thing. Without Caterpillar attached to this, as they're building a tech center in our community south of 840, right below Independence High School, that's where those students will go for internships. That's where those students could potentially get employed to go work. So giving back, and specifically if they're in our community, it's even better. Obviously, we start in our community trying to get those sponsors, and if it doesn't quite work that way, we're in the Middle Tennessee region within our area, within driving distance, that we want our partners to come in. Without it, it's not successful, really, because let's take cybersecurity as an example. If we did a traditional cybersecurity classroom at the high school level with a traditional high school teacher, by the time we even place a teacher and get a textbooks in their hand, cybersecurity's already changed. So we want those businesses in tow. We tell them we want their time, their talent, and their treasure. We want their DNA all over this thing. We want them to shape the next workforce. We want them to be proud of that and develop our kids. I mean, honestly, our talent is so unbelievable. It's like I told Chief, if we didn't get the age requirements and get everything in place for this fire situation, our kids leave the community and it's hard to get them back. You've got to get them now. You got to be involved early. So that's what we've been telling our sponsors. So it's huge. Thank you.
You guys.
Good stuff. Thank you. Okay, how about a development activity report? Catherine Harrelson, come to front and center.
It's really thinking. Must be. Here, I'm gonna go grab my slides real quick. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. It is that time again for your quarterly development activity report. And this will be for the first quarter of 2026, so January 1st all the way through the end of March. We will be going over kind of our usual data points. We'll be talking about permitting activity, your permanent impact fee collections, housing and construction costs, and then we'll also be touching on the survey update. So we'll go ahead and get started with the 2026 permitting activity for the first quarter. In 2026, first 3 months, the city issued 230 building permits, 1,044 trade permits, that's your mechanical, plumbing, and electrical permits, and then there were 80 fire permits issued. When you look at that over the last 5 years, comparing apples to apples, this is a little bit of a decrease, but it's still pretty steady with where we are in the first quarter. This is typically the slow season for construction. It's the winter months. As it was mentioned earlier, we had an ice storm that happened this winter, so this all plays into an effect usually with how construction statistics go. So this is not unusual. Let's see. Then when we go to permit and impact fee collections, for the first 3 months of 2026, we collected just about $500,000 in permit fees, $452,000 in road impact fees, just under $40,000 in water impact fees, $354,000 in sewer impact fees, and $257,000 in facilities tax. And if you look at it as a pie chart as far as the impact fees, road impact fees always are our biggest slice. They take up about 41%. Sewer impact fees are second at about 32%. Facilities tax is around 23%, and water impact fees as the smallest is about 4%. This is lower than where we've been in the last 5 years. This is really due to the lack of commercial. We've permitted some commercial this quarter, but it hasn't been a lot, and it hasn't been large scale. I also want to point out, last year we ended up collecting an unusually high amount, and that was because we had permitted both in and out, and we had permitted the multifamily development over in West Haven. So we had unusually high collections last year. And then when we go to housing and construction costs, you will see that we've permitted 57 new single-family dwelling units, 3 townhome units, and 0 multifamily for the first quarter. And then in the construction values, the value of those permits for residential is about $66 million. Non-residential, $33 million, which that totaled to just over $100 million in permitted development. While this is kind of a slower season, I do want to say this is very similar to 2023 when we didn't really have a whole lot of, we didn't actually permit any multifamily development in 2023. But this first quarter, we had similar numbers. It was a little bit slower, but the total construction value was like 75 million. So this is 100 million, kind of at the same level. So what we're still seeing is a higher level of investment happening in the community. We're still seeing high quality and high value development happening. And then I want to touch on the survey update. I've been keeping you guys updated on the mini surveys that we've implemented in October, so now we're getting to about that 6-month mark. I'm happy to say that responses really jumped up after my last quarterly development report. We now have 57 total responses on those mini customer satisfaction surveys, and we have an average rating of 4.7 stars, which is still really high. I always like to highlight one of the comments that we receive, and this one, we had an anonymous responder say that the online portal was very simple and navigable, that they received good human responses from staff, and they were well constructed and informative. They even said that the best aspect of the process was that while they know they are not the only customer, that the staff person that they spoke to made them feel like they were the only customer. So I always like to highlight that. We have about 27 comments now on that open-ended box, and they are overwhelmingly positive. So we like to kind of keep an eye on that, and I will keep you guys updated when I report next. 2 other things to update you guys on. First is the growth communication strategy. Last development report, I came to you all saying that staff is in the works of developing one. Now I can come before you all and say that staff has drafted a communication strategy to help spread valuable information about growth to the residents of Franklin. Presentations of this new strategy have been made to several different local groups, such as Frank Talks and the Downtown Rotary Club. Staff is also looking for more opportunities if any other groups would like to hear this presentation or learn more about this information. Our Assistant City Administrator, Walter Denton, is the lead on this project, so if any groups are interested in hearing more about it, they're more than welcome to reach out to him, and we will get them that information. And then lastly, as I'm updating you on the response to the survey, I get to tell you that we're in the process of developing the next development customer survey. It's almost been 2 years since we've done the last one, and we promised you guys we would come back. So that's in the very beginning stages of development, and our goal is to go live sometime this fall. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Questions for Kathy? Great.
I would say one thing. One of the key things you said when you had community response is they said the key word was human response. I love that, and we need to continue to do that because I think the human response rather than automated is so helpful for our community, and I think they've come to expect that and to know that we expect that of ourselves. So thanks for highlighting that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Catherine. Good job. Okay, we're going to go to item 4, which is Resolution 2026-32, a resolution authorizing the use of competitive seal proposal procurement method for selecting sanitary sewer pretreatment program support services. Why can't you do some acronyms there?
Because Casey won't let me. So this is just a pretty simple one. This is on both agendas. If you remember, a handful of years ago, we had tried to phase out our relationship with the subcontractor to kind of bring it more in-house. We've had some staffing challenges at the wastewater plant that have kind of pulled the pretreatment inspector who does this into other directions, so I need to bring him back on board. So he inspects our industrial users once a year, and then also every restaurant gets inspected in Franklin, which is a bit of a task. And so those have to be scheduled, and then he also does kind of, random if we've got, we think this, someone might be discharging some, fog or other things. So it's a bit of a task to do this. I'm happy to answer any questions. So this is just the resolution to authorize the competitive sealing, the bid process that purchasing will put out.
Everybody good? Okay, item 5 is ordinance 2026-13, an ordinance to amend the City of Franklin Municipal Code, Title 12, Chapter 1, and Appendix A, Comprehensive Fees and Penalties, Chapter 12, Building, Utility, etc., codes to increase minimum non-residential plan review fees and, and establish a residential and fire protection plan review fee, established in public hearing June the 9th, 2026. Tom Marsh.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Alderman. I'm here to talk to you briefly about ordinance 2026-13. There is a short presentation, but it is only on the 7 o'clock meeting agenda, but hopefully I will be done talking by the time that would spool up anyway. This ordinance will, as I said, we will propose to increase our non-residential plan review fees and establish for the first time a plan review fee for residential and fire plan reviews. A couple of numbers for you. Our budget and innovation team helped us, specifically Catherine, thank you very much, helped us evaluate the cost of our plan review service that we provide. And in fact, our non-residential plan review fee has not been increased for probably 20 years. And we have never had a residential plan review fee or a fire plan review fee. Currently, again, with the assistance from our budget office, we determined that the cost of the service for non-residential plan review fee is about $1,650 per project. And that is very much primarily based on the staff that we have devoted to that process, correct? And the average fees that are paid right now is only $255. So there's a significant gap there between current collections and the cost of the service we're providing. On the residential side, the cost is about $375 per application, per project. Again, obviously, currently collection zero. The fire cost is approximately $161 per project, and again, the cost is zero. So with ordinance 2026-13, the non-residential plan review fee right now, there's a minimum starting point of $50 per plan review fee, and then the overall fee escalates based on the value of the construction project. The proposal with this ordinance is to increase that minimum from 50 to 250, and the same escalation based on the value will continue to be the same. What's the proposed change is just the base right now. And with that increase, the anticipated collection would go from an average of about $255 per project up to $1,045 per project. We're still short of the cost that's about $1,600 per project. On the residential side, we're proposing a flat $100 plan review fee. It would only apply to new construction residential, 2,000 square feet or larger. The anticipated collection, obviously, $100 per project. So still short of the cost, but we're starting to make up ground on what that overall cost. And then finally, the flat rate that we would propose for the fire protection plan reviews is $50 per project. So I think that covers it, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you've got.
This is your only fee adjustment within the general fund, proposed general fund budget for fiscal 27.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. The resubmittal review fees, are these, what, that applies to everything, all,
Non-residential, correct.
just non-residential?
And that is current, it would apply to, there again, if the new residential and fire protection plan review fees is established, adopted, then it would apply there also. And that, the resubmittal plan, that is a fee that is currently in the municipal code that we have not implemented. What it currently states in the appendix, the initial plan review fee that is paid is for the initial review and 1 second re-review. So on the third time a set of plans comes in, we could be charging an additional 50% plan review fee. Over the years, we have not done that yet. We propose to do that starting July the 1st of this year also, giving notice to all of our customers that would be coming. What we have heard with recent legislation from the state relative to plan review processes and fees, we may not go that path.
Yeah, so first question was going to be related to the state law changes and this. The other thing is just the resubmittal review fees. And I think, without getting into the weeds here right now, but I think there could, I've been doing this long enough now, and I think others could chime in, is that sometimes we work on deadlines, right? And we have time frames in which we get back, responses back, and we hit those.
Yes, sir.
I would really be concerned, let me phrase it like this. I would be concerned if we're not getting all the comments back, comprehensive, conclusive, and complete comments back to the applicant from every department, and then having them have it, and then the next submittal, then there's responses there that they didn't get in on the first one, but now that I think there's sometimes departments will be, well, I know they're going to have to resubmit because I saw all these comments from the other departments, and so I'm not going to put all my comments in now. I'm going to wait to the resubmittal and do that. I think I'm using that as an example. There are other situations. It's hard for me to pinpoint anecdotes, but I think the resubmittal review fees, if they're not getting everything completely responded to, maybe there's this assumption that there's going to be a resubmittal, and so maybe all the comments aren't provided by every department. Does that?
That's a good one that I'm happy to address, and it's a concern. I think we've come a long way at addressing that concern.
I agree.
And you're right. For non-residential plan reviews, our standard, the initial submittal 20 business days, following reviews 10 business days. We always hit the mark. And we've been very cognizant of thorough, complete plan reviews. A possible result of that initial 20 business day plan review, if for some reason we have not completed our plan review, we have the option of notifying the customer. There are so many problems that was, in fact, one of the challenges with the hard implementation. On the third time that comes in, we're getting an additional 50% plan review fee, because a lot of times the insufficiency of the plans on the first submittal was incomplete.
Yeah.
So we would say this is an incomplete plan review because the plans were of such poor quality. And as we've talked about, one of the efforts to apply that 50% additional plan review fee on the third time is trying to encourage people to do more preparation work before they submit the first time.
It's a two-way
to have
street.
more complete
It's a two-way
submittals.
street too. I bet you're probably right though. On the professional services side, they kind of think, oh well, we're going to have to, we're going to have to do this 2 or 3 or 4 submittals. So let's get this in, let's get comments back, and then it's just back and forth. I think we need to eliminate that, or as much as possible. But I wonder if there's any way, because there are going to be circumstances in which someone might need the ability to waive a resubmittal fee if there are reasonable reason, and maybe you could do that, or we could write that into the ordinance that someone has that authority, because what you definitely don't want is you sitting across from, or us getting a call from Sam saying, I had all this ready, now I've got this other comment, and there's probably great reasons on both sides for everything, and now I'm getting 50% more fee, and if everyone knows it makes sense, then someone needs to be able to say, you know what, we're going to waive the fee on this one, because you're right, we didn't get that to you. Just good customer service.
Part of the purpose of the fee, though, is to create an incentive to get us a complete set. Because sometimes people use it as, phased in. I get a shot, I get another shot, it doesn't cost them anymore. If there's an incentive okay, I better get it more complete so that I don't have to pay additional fees, it actually should help enhance the quality that we get up front, because sometimes that's what happens.
I think I agree, and it's a two-way street.
Yep.
And there are situations. I mean, I've seen it on the actual comments before, where it's I I'll address this at the next submittal.
as that may be overcome by the state legislation also anyway.
Right.
And one thing, I will plug the work of the Development Services Advisory Commission here, and that's one of the things that, as these fee increases were discussed with the Development Services Advisory Commission, and also just in general, the plan review process, the back and forth is probably, and as Catherine mentioned, the Development Services Customer Survey, that's kind of probably an ongoing continual discussion of trying to refine the work that goes back and forth between applicants and staff. So,
As long as there's an ability in someone, it won't, I guess, be you, because,
I can do that.
as long as there's some ability for us to be flexible there, because there are gonna be those one-offs.
Yes, sir.
Where it's like everybody knows this makes sense, and then the fee, so just as long, is that included in this ordinance, or is that
It
something?
doesn't need to be, I mean, that, there again, that additional plan review, that is something that is already in the code. So that's part of the process that we haven't necessarily implemented. So,
But if it doesn't say, if it doesn't give someone the option to waive the fee, or the opportunity, then no one is going, people are not gonna go, I would hope they would not go and start waiving fees without. So if do we need to put something in there that would give
To
someone the
provide for
authority
the
to
ability
them?
to waive the fee.
I'm kind of looking over at our attorney.
Do you want to know about waiving a fee for subsequent review?
We voting on this tonight?
Yes. This is your first of 3 readings, so any fees,
Maybe,
taxes,
maybe for the
et cetera.
second reading, we could get some
Yeah.
more.
If you're not giving yourself the authority to do it, you won't be able to do it. And it's not in here, right?
Right.
Right, you need to provide the authority to.
Right, but also does there need to be provision there that gives some affirmative flexibility with someone to waive a fee?
If you want it, yeah, you'll have to draft it that way. Otherwise, no. Whereas it's written right now, you cannot do that.
I would like for you all to draft something that gives us the ability to discuss that at the second reading.
We can, that is I think, an easy asterisk to add
Yeah.
to Appendix A. That's where it is, right now, is it's identified that the subsequent plan review is only, or the initial plan review fee is only for the initial and the second review.
I just don't want your hands tied, staff's hands tied, when you're like, I know this doesn't make, I know, but we're gonna have, you have to resubmit, and and you have a 50% fee, I don't have it, There are gonna be some situations where that might be helpful for staff and for everyone. Thank you.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. Tom, quick question, 2 questions, actually. At the very beginning, you said we hadn't touched this fee in almost 20 years. For us, who may not have been around here 20 years ago, why have we not touched the fee in that time frame? Or if you know that, and then also, do we have a plan to revisit this so we're not waiting an additional 20 years in the future if we're putting that on a 3 or 5
It
year
is
schedule?
not certainly planned to revisit yet. We could add that in. I think part of what, the reason it hasn't been touched prior to this point was, as the building values increase, the plan review fee paid would also increase. So there's probably a thought that inflation value is covered to some extent, but we hadn't gone back and looked at that base number.
Yeah, I'd like to see that in place instead of us just saying, well, we haven't touched it in 20 years, but these assumptions were made. I'd rather see that in the document itself.
And I think it's part of the question also as to how much of the service that we provide do we want to cover? And that certainly comes into play on the residential side. And there again, with our residential customers, part of the service to them is covered, they pay property taxes.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Caesar.
Thanks, Tom. Quick question, does the state regulate our upper limit on these fees?
No.
So we can go to whatever point we do. And just out of curiosity,
They're
whatever
about
we
to.
think is right and fair, right? And I should quickly say on the back of that I don't see this as a revenue generating function of our city government. As you said earlier, I think very appropriately, people pay property taxes for some of these services. Do we know how much, I know you said there will be an increase in 400,000. Do you know how much we generated from fees in 2025?
Catherine probably
All
has that.
fees
relieve it.
Or these
within-
4 fees that we were
Actually,
talking about today?
Yeah, I've got, actually, the estimate going, yeah, it was 100 for, have you got it? I think it's 100, I think it's 114,000. Is that the right number? Yes. It was 114,000 for 2025, and with the increase to 1,000, or the increase in the base fee on the non-residential, that would be estimated, the estimate for revenue would be 470,000. For 2025, on just the non-residential, $114,564.
It's roughly about a 40% cost recovery, if I remember right, from when we presented at building or budget and finance. When you roll it all together, it's about a 40% cost recovery.
Staff cost total $742,000. And with
Just under 500,000.
Michael Walters Young, Chief Budget and Performance Officer. Regarding the estimate is $470,000 that could be generated with all of these fees inclusively being added. We are being conservative, however, in the fiscal 27 budget and assuming only a collection of an additional $200,000 to $230,000 because it is the initial time of raising these fees and kind of seeing and shaking down where they fall. Just FYI.
Well, I'll make a quick comment as chairman of the complaint department sometimes, because that's where I end up getting some of these and just my experience is that staff is doing a great job. And many times, a few of the applicants feel like the Building and Neighborhood Services should be doing their plans for them. So I think this is an important change to encourage. Y'all do a great job, and I think the Development Services Advisory Commission and staff have really worked to make our processes more predictable. And so hopefully there's no need to do a third time.
Right, yes, sir. That's what we would all like. We want to be predictable if nothing else.
Item 6 is City of Franklin contract number 2026-0148 with Lodestar, previously PMA Management Group, regarding third-party administration services for the City of Franklin Self-Insured Workmen's Compensation Program.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your time this afternoon. So this is on both agendas, and it's pretty straightforward. It's third-party administrative services for our self-insured workers' comp program, formerly PMA Management Group, but now they have been purchased by Lodestar. So they're our vendor since we went self-insured in 2020. So this will be a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options to renew.
Questions? Okay, item 7 is resolution 2026-13 and acknowledging a concept plan for the former DePriest property and closure of a portion of Strahl Street and a future unification of the property as park space.
Let's see if I can pull something up.
Ms. Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Before you, I came before you in February, and so I've taken this on the road show, it seems is, to speak to several of our commissions, speak to community groups, and also quite a few of the residents in this area. And so what's before you this evening, and we can come back, we have a resolution to where it would basically adopt this concept master plan for the expansion of Carter Hill Park. The Battle of Franklin Trust and the City of Franklin Parks and Recreation Department's in agreement of what the concept master plan includes. And so, if I may, just to kind of go through a few of those park amenities, is to basically emulate what is across the street, as you would have the split rail fencing, we would like to add a few because we have more residents on this side, is the picnic table and a couple of benches in this area. Interpretive signage, which you may have seen 6 signs has already gone in. We can move those depending on where a future trail system may be, but we wanted to go ahead and at least tell the story in the interim until we're ready to move forward. And I thank Eric Jacobson and his team for doing that. Add a water fountain, including a dog fountain bottle filler in this area. One of the commissioners from our historic zoning brought forth is, even though the future Carter House Center is there, and it will open up very soon, it is still a pretty long distance if you are in need of some type of ADA assistance. And so one of the things they brought forth was to where if the possibility, if we could add a couple of handicap accessible parking spaces, and maybe once we add those, is when is the right timing. He left that back up to the city, and that might be is everyone is in agreement, and of all the groups that I spoke with, is to look at least put some type of caveat within the master plan for Claiborne Street and Granbury of some type of alignment through there. This area backs up so much with traffic, but everyone believes it would help everyone in this area if you did some type of alignment. Now, we do have an existing, because it's been in existence for a while, is the cannonballs. Some of the things that we may not be able to move from a historical standpoint, it's not historical that was something, but the preservation and the state actually requires us to not move those type of things once they're installed. But it's still all park property. And so where do you make that alignment and what that looks like? Now, that might be a future in our transportation plan as we do updates or capital, but at least put some type of sentence within this master plan that the city would at least review that in a future date of what that would look like. And maybe this is where the ADA parking would come about. So a lot of agreement through all the groups. Once I got to the residents are not, as you can imagine, and so I want to be transparent, and I told them I would be very transparent with them because they were very gracious to bring me into the Reddick Center and other places we met on site, but they are not in favor of closing Straw Street. Or any portion of Straw Street. They do use it, their concerns were from emergency concerns. Many times that you will have ambulances or emergency services coming into the site, they use it every day is some of the comments. And of all these comments are included in your packet. It would cut off, they would become basically through the Reddick Center from Straw Street to Granbury. It's already a cut-through street for many of the area. They believe that would increase even more. But one of the things in which we did talk about that night is what would you be in favor of if we did close Straw Street? Or what would you be in favor of if you didn't have that two-way traffic? Because they do understand park users now crossing another roadway with vehicular traffic. They were in option of having it as a one-way, right in only. And so turning Straw Street into at least down to until you get to at least Reddick Street or right through that area and somewhere to where it would be just a one-way in. You couldn't exit to Columbia. So that is what we heard tonight, over the past couple of months. And so I'm here, I did have it in the agenda item that if you want to have conversation with residents, if you want to think about it and have your own conversations now that you've heard and you see the results from the comments from each of the meetings, we do not take possession of this property until the end of June from Franklin's charge. So we do have some time, but we are working toward that. At least that's the timeline they have provided to the city. I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
I do have a public speaker, if I might hear from him. That'd be great. Tony Moriali.
Good evening. I believe I was referenced in the meeting about the ADA accessible parking for the proposal to close Straw Street. And I just wanted to pass on an anecdote as a citizen of Franklin that I encountered about 5 weeks ago when I was speaking with a man who had a disability, and he was very excited about seeing this new property south of Straw, and he asked me how he could get there. And I said, well, at present, you can park at the library or you can park at the Carter House Visitor Center. And he looked at me in the eye and he said, nope. And he went back to his van, loaded up, and disappeared. And I think that's just a real world experience of a few weeks ago about this is something, regardless of where it's put, that should be addressed to allow access to this parcel to all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, Alderman Caesar.
Thanks, Lisa, for bringing this together and for bringing other minds in to help shape what this looks like in the future. I would just ask a question similar to what Mr. Mullally just raised. Where do people visiting this park park?
On the concept plan you have is where the future visitor center will be. They are providing, that's where tours begin. We do not provide tours to the park system. As you know, the Battle of Franklin Trust would provide those tours. You'd buy a ticket, especially if you're doing a tour for the Carter House, and then they also do tours on the site itself. So for residents, we're thinking they will walk into the park. If you're just coming to the park, then yes, you would park at that particular area. And then, of course, the public library is closer if you wanted to access it. But we do not have any parking for this park as of today. We've always just used the Carter House Visitor Center as part of the parking plan. Because mostly this park is kind of what we consider, it may not be as we've grown, as it grows, but it was a neighborhood park. You kind of walk into those. We did not do on Old Liberty Pike for that neighborhood park or Thompson Alley. Even though there's places to park, people just pull off. Yeah. This is kind of caused, you have a lot of parking on Straw Street, and this is where Eric has shared with me, and we saw it that night we were on site. People will just pull off to the side and pull onto the battlefield. And they'll just park and get out. And I understand why they're parking so close, but you also can't just park anywhere. And so it's a little bit of a quandary right here because you've created a park out of, and we've done away with parking areas on this park. So.
But it's a neighborhood park too.
It's a neighborhood park.
Hypothetically, you've got the folks walking in, which is probably on the surface what it seems like, but we've also become, and have been for quite a while, a destination for tourists. And this is an extension of the Carter House experience in some regards. And are we going to gate it so that you can't get onto the Carter House by coming in through this park? I don't think that's the hope or the plan. And then one final comment, because I think that's the question, whether it's ADA or whether it's folks from out of town or folks from the south part of town that are wanting to come up and enjoy this park. Is the library going to call us in 6 months and say, hey, we've got 25 people parking in our parking lot and we're not comfortable with that? Maybe they won't. The final piece I would raise is the ability to cross safely Columbia Avenue. Is that part of this concept? Because I imagine if you get to this park and you see the Texas Monument on the other side or the stacked cannonballs, you're going to want to go over and explore. And I want people to do that, but I want them to do it safely. So we got to think about, I don't know right now that there is a crosswalk at Claiborne and Columbia. I don't believe there's a crosswalk at Granbury and Columbia. So how do people get from this park to the other two parks, the former Domino's Park?
Sure, that's kind of the $1 million question a little bit.
Probably like $5 million.
Well, maybe like $5 million. I think those things would come once you do a realignment. However, because this is a state right-of-way, they do not allow for just crossing at any given place. And so Paul and I have had this discussion many times, is where is there a clear place to and safely do it? I think that's one of the things in which we just have to add to a plan that we continue to investigate. You know, I can't stand up here tonight and say, hey, we've got a clear path that this is where the state said that you can go. But we can definitely take a look at what that means. And it needs to be added to the plan because there's a lot of different pieces to this. And I don't think we can accomplish it all just in year one. But that's a great point to add.
Thank you.
I've got Alderman Brown, and then I've got the Vice Mayor, and then Alderman Barney.
My comments were about crossing Columbia. I'm good, Mayor.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
And I think that comes with, thank you, Mayor, the realignment with Granbury and Claiborne. I would ask that you look into the Tennessee Heritage Protection Act. We can move those cannonballs, but we have to get the state to
Permission.
approve.
Yes, we do.
And I think as long as they're not removed from the, and my understanding is those are not necessarily marking anything specific on that specific patch of ground. So I do think we should not let that prohibit us from continuing to look at that intersection and aligning it, because I would think that would be the better route to go, is to the south of the property to align with Granbury and opening that up. And then that's where I feel like the best crosswalk would be, and it's four signaled, and or it'd solve a lot of things. On the topic at hand with the straw, this is something that we're going to have to dig into a little bit. I understand the residents' concerns, and I also think it would be fantastic to have the street closed and provide for this, the battlefield, to have this be one accessible park. So I want to look into that further. I probably want to speak again with some of the residents, coming up with something specific. They're already a lot of these are all cut-throughs. So we've got really a network of cut-through streets in many regards, including one of them being their parking lot, which I don't even know if that would be able to be designed like that today. But it's just that parking lot is not meant to have through traffic go through it, and I am concerned what this might do if people come down to Granbury, take a right through their parking lot, and then a left on Straw. I don't know if we could work with them in some capacity to keep that through traffic. I'm not as concerned with the emergency vehicles. I think that fire and police and safety would have highlighted that concern. I think that will be fine. I do think it's good for public safety, because that kind of exit onto Columbia from Straw now can be very dangerous as an unsignaled intersection. You have people cutting across, and in the afternoons the traffic is really bad. It's bad on both ways. People stopped up at that light, and so it's not. You're someone's going to having to let you out on Straw to get onto Columbia now. So there are some pros, but I am concerned about particularly the Reddick senior residents there, and their parking lot becoming a thoroughfare. I don't know how we might, discuss that further, or again speak with them. But without some additional solutions, you said one way on Straw, but maybe there's some ways to do this one way with the road being shut down. But maybe that little section of Straw is just one way, so you can't go both ways, one way or the other. I don't know. Just getting creative with assuming this is what we want to go with, but how can we kind of protect possibly? It's that parking lot that gives me the most heartburn on the whole thing.
It gave them, they were very kind. I met with half the residents that were in that particular senior center. They came out that night. And so as we were standing in the parking area, you had cut through. It was coming through. So I had mentioned let's mention additional signage as part of this. Let's include our police department as part of the solution. More education in this area. They do a lot, and so I think there's some things we can do. Their concern is that people would begin to utilize, even though I say this in a public meeting, people would use the public library, they would use the visitor center. But people go to the least resistance of where the closest thing. And a lot of times they will park here. And it's open to the public, but it's open to their residents. So it's not, no one's there to police it. No one's there to enforce it.
They're ticketing folks there now, too.
They try to as much as possible. to solve that issue.
Yeah, and I
And
don't blame 'em.
it's a daily thing
Absolutely.
for them. Uh-huh.
In the Reddick Senior Residence parking lot.
In the parking lot, yes, ma'am. So.
That is still a challenge.
Alderman Barnhill.
My comment is related to the closing of Straw Street and somewhat to the alignment of Cleburne and Granbury, which is some of the things that I've mentioned in the past that needs to be looked at and we need to do. I think that the closing of Straw Street is extremely important. I think that gives this area here the look of the battlefield, and that's what we were trying to do when what was done here was done. I do have sympathy for those who think it's going to be make a cut through at Reddick and this and that. I don't see that many cars going up and down, either in or out of Straw Street anyway, because just like I said, it's not signalized. You can't get out with the traffic that's there now. So when this gets a little further along, I think that our emphasis should be to solve whatever the issues as much as possible, but still understand that Straw Street needs to be closed. One way, I don't think that does anything for you. One way in, I guess, would be. And also, I think that probably Cleburne and Granbury would match up to be Coleman and Henpeck. And I think that needs to be aligned. Well, I've said that to, I believe, Alderman Baggett before, and especially the closing of Straw Street once we got buildings off of this portion of the property right here. The other comment, I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding what's being expected in this part versus what's in the other side, because that's all Battlefield reclaimed Pizza Hut property and this and that. So what are we getting into this particular property here then?
Basically, you're just expanding what you do on that one side, you do on the other side. Is that your question?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
much the question.
Yeah, you would, basically, you see this, as we got the same type of trails, you would see the trails come in, you would see the split line fencing and maybe openings along. Now, along this area, we may want to strategically understand if we've got visitors or walkers on this side, then we may want to make sure, because you've got some sidewalks as well, we'll have some openings through that. You wouldn't close it off to where you would make them go to an end and come in. You may have several openings, which is easy to do because we actually construct the fencing. So you'll see a lot of the same. What we do have here is you've got the park next to the Reddick Center is one of the things that every group mentioned, but even before I got to the senior center, it was to allow for them that we create some type of ingress egress for them from a walkability standpoint. The majority of them have dogs. They actually go out into the park space already. They go across the street in the mornings. They ask that, just having a little bit of maybe some lighting as their entranceway into that park so they feel safe. But you'll see hopefully you won't see any difference within a couple of years of what it would look like from one side of the road to the other. It would just be a natural kind of thing. But Straw Street, by closing Straw Street, it gives us the opportunity to connect straight to Carter House safely from a walkability standpoint. But all the residents, including the commissions, also said if they use Straw Street as a walkable area right now, then make sure that alignment of that pathway is a little bit more straight to Columbia so that they still have that opportunity from a walkability or bike, which we can easily do as a city.
Alderman Burke.
You go into some of these subdivisions and you'll see, when you go down the street, you'll see a cut-in for parking. Just the width of a car. Is there a way, if you take Claiborne and Granbury and connect them, you go in along Granbury and along Claiborne to go in and do those little parking spaces
I
on
think
both sides.
I think you're spot on. Actually, Granbury, if you'll see on the map, the master plan where it's got that little bit of a crosswalk and it leads into the that pathway, we are actually leaving. There was a driveway right there for one of those commercial residences. We wanted to be able to leave that for maintenance so that when you're mowing, you're actually not pulling towards Straw Street or that type thing. You would pull in. We believe there's some opportunity there, even if it was in the interim, if we wanted to as a city. We could create some small parking through that area. So that would be an option for us in the interim. And then realignment more of a permanent type ADA, what it would be required when you do the Claiborne-Granbury realignment.
Yeah, I think if we do the realignment, there's opportunities on both sides of the street there that you could, punch into that area and create those parking spaces along there. It would be perfectly, and I agree with Autumn and Barnhill about connecting the two properties, closing down Straw Street, because I think we need to align those properties and get that all one piece and not have it disturbed by a road. Those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Potts.
Thanks, sir. Lisa, thanks for the presentation. I actually went out there on Saturday and drove this and agree with what you said. Right now, you've got, as you exit Straw Street, on the right and left, you've got the small no parking signs all along there to keep people off the grass. And as fellow alderman said, when I got to that point to turn left or right onto Columbia Avenue, I had to wait for multiple lights before I could make that move. So I am in favor of closing Straw Street to connect the parks. I think Alderman Barnhill hit the nail on the head on that. And somewhere in the future, making the connection with the intersection, I think, is good. And I also, I would think that the cannonballs could be moved one way or the other, as Alderman Baggett had made reference to. And the only other thing that I might add is at the end of Straw Street, where that dead end is, if you're going to consider putting in parking, what is that little dash next to Cranberry Street that you were just referencing? Maybe there's an opportunity to put in 2 small parking spaces, one for handicap, one for standard parking, there at the end of Straw Street. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Could you could you make emergency exit only on Straw? Look into that.
Share
Straw-
with me what your thoughts.
Straw
Alderman.
Street,
Mhm.
where the Reddick Senior Residence, the parking, it's a cut through now. But looking at ways to prevent the cut through traffic. I don't know if that would be possible.
Let me speak with
Speak
the
with
chief
Fire and everybody. I'm not putting. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No,
but I'm
I
sitting
didn't know.
thinking, like,
That's part of this process
like
because
maybe-
we will need to address
maybe that will
that.
keep them. That actually might help a lot of that cut through.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
Where would you put an emergency exit only where?
Access
Through
only.
the park?
No.
Where?
On this new diagram, you see how Straw and what is that? Reddick Street kind of. There's just this one little short section.
Yeah,
of-
that where the street continues on
Yeah,
to the park.
Either there, there
this
or
area.
right. Yeah, the top of that, at the very top there,
Uh-huh.
or right there.
I think that's where you have to do it.
Emergency vehicles only, and that way.
We brought that up because one of the groups had brought up is maybe you would put bollards to where it basically this would be emergency only. No one else was out of all the other commissions and everybody in favor of doing away with if it was only emergency, that you taking away an entrance or an ingress egress from the residents. It is a cut through, but the residents would rather it still have a cut through than if you were to make this emergency only. Now, I just bring that forth is
It's better for them.
it could be
Yeah.
better for them.
I'm not sure if it is better for them or not. Yeah.
Because they
only have one way out now.
Mhm.
Yeah, but they only have one way to leave.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so point is.
they leave out Straw Street and they leave out Granbury right now.
Yeah.
Are you
Right.
saying that you would only want them to leave out Granbury and Straw Street only emergency access? to make sure that I'm.
Will you look into if that's feasible? I'm not saying that's what I want to do.
No, I understand.
It's feasible. It
Yeah.
just may not be preferred
Yeah,
for them.
Right.
No, that's
So-
It helps with cut through, but it also gives them, lessens an option for them to go north.
Correct.
Okay.
But we're happy to evaluate that.
Yeah, we can
See.
certainly look at that. I
Evaluate
think
it.
Sean is right. You probably want to abandon that little segment of straw and make it no longer a city street if
Yeah.
you went that path.
And call it a private drive.
Yeah.
And then they could still access that part of Straw and that part of Granbury. They go either way, but it would be private right where their development starts. You could deed that to them as a surplus property.
Well, I don't want to take up any more time on this, but that is good. I appreciate you looking into that. Maybe toss it around a little bit more, and
Be happy
next
to.
discussion we can report back.
So if that's the case, then I probably will not come back with a resolution in 2 weeks. It'll probably be the end of June to allow you time if you wanted to speak to residents or discussion.
Yeah, we want to circle back.
And we
with
want to
this.
circle.
We may want to follow up work session discussion to make sure we put in a
Yes.
resolution what you all want.
Yeah,
So.
if that's okay with y'all. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Item 8, discussion of updated e-bike legislative changes.
All right. So first, I do want to thank publicly Jack Johnson and Lee Reeves because they took this bill and worked with me on the language, and we got it passed. And now, at least we have some ability to do something if you want. We're going to talk about what the law is now, what the bill. How do I move this over? Do I use this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should be over there.
There we go. So we're going to talk about what the code says. We're going to talk about the bicycle law, the new e-bike law, and then what are some options for you. And then once I get through that, I'm going to sit down so I can write down all of your comments because I have a feeling that some of you will have some, and I don't want to miss any of that. Okay, so the municipal code right now says that for bicycles, that's 2 wheels, no motor, just a bicycle, follows all the state laws. And what the state law says is that bicycles are pretty much allowed anywhere. Anywhere that a vehicle is allowed, a bicycle is allowed. The Franklin Municipal Code also says, though, that skateboards, roller skates, coasters, or any other similar play vehicle is not allowed on any public street, sidewalk, public building, or public place, and that includes trails. So technically, riding your roller skates on the sidewalk in your neighborhood probably is not allowed. So we got to fix that, right? We got to think about how we're going to fix that. Also, in the municipal code, and I forgot to put this on here, it says no operation of motorized vehicles within boundaries of parks or city property, except for public streets or designated areas, is allowed. So really, there are some things that we put in our code a long, long time ago that needs to be addressed as we work through this. So the Tennessee state law addresses bicycles, and again, pretty much says that bicycles have regulations that apply on all highways, paths, pretty much allowed anywhere that vehicles are allowed. That also includes e-bikes, and parents and guardians may not knowingly allow their children to break any of those laws. Bicycles and e-bikes have the same rights and duties as motor vehicle drivers, which also means that they've got to follow the law on signage. So if the sign said stop and they're on a bike or an e-bike, they have to stop. The law does talk about riders who are on play vehicles must use a permanent seat. They're not allowed to have any passengers beyond its capacity. So a lot of times we've had complaints about people having multiple people on an e-bike. That's not allowed. And again, the state law does address roller skates and coasters, but it only says that they're allowed when we say that they can be allowed, and we've said that they're not so far. So this slide kind of goes over the differences between a Class 1, a Class 2, and a Class 3. And these are really hard for our officers to determine, like looking from afar. But this is how the state law designates e-bikes. It is what we have, and we have to deal with it the way it is. So class 1 and class 2, you can see, are around 20 miles an hour. Class 3 are 28, but we do know that they can go a lot faster than that. Class 1 are pedal assist, class 2 are throttle allowed, and then class 3 is pedal assist only. This talks about class 1 are allowed where bikes are allowed, and then class 3 is also allowed on streets and highways because they can go faster. And then bike paths, they are allowed where the cities are okay with them, being driven. So as you know, we got the e-bike law passed. And the e-bike law, it's Public Chapter 651, authorizes local governments to prohibit Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes on bicycle paths, streets, highways, and trails by ordinance or resolution. And it also means that if it's a state route, but within the city limits, we are allowed to also regulate that. So Columbia Avenue, Lewisburg, those kind of roads, we can also make rules about that. The public chapter requires local governments adopting a prohibition to submit a copy of that resolution or ordinance to the Department of Safety, because I think that they're going to be putting those out on their websites. And then it directs the Department of Safety to compile and publish on their website all the public parks and greenways where e-bikes are prohibited. The tricky part is, when you prohibit it in one place but allow it in another, how does someone take it from place A to place B if it's prohibited in an area? And how would someone who's driving through know that? That's just something that you're going to have to kind of think about. This public chapter does not change the existing ban on Class 3 e-bikes not being allowed on public paths and trails. And again, one thing I really try to work with Jack's office on is making sure that riders of Class 3 e-bikes are 16 or older. That's really, really important. One thing I forgot to mention on the other slide, though, helmets are required for anyone under the age of 16, regardless of which e-bike they're on. And again, you have to be 16 to drive the Class 3. That's tricky for our officers, though. They almost have to see the bike and see the how the bike is labeled on the bike itself. One other important part about this law, and it's already in law as well, if someone changes the bike, if they take the governor off or they do something like that, it is a Class 3 or Class C misdemeanor. So you're not allowed to do that, although people have been. All right, so this kind of talks about where the municipal code lines up with the state law and whether or not you need to either take action or not. So bicycles on sidewalks, state law applies. They are allowed if we generally, and they are allowed by the municipal code because it's allowed by state law. If you like that, we can leave it, no conflict. So you can ride a bicycle on sidewalks, and you can ride a bicycle both in the Franklin municipal city limits and in state law. So if you're good with that, then you don't need to change anything. Those two align. Play vehicles like skateboards, roller skates, those kind of things. And Franklin City Code, again, it's prohibited pretty much everywhere. State law says it's restricted to sidewalks unless we designate other places. So it aligns with state law. We are okay with that, but that's not how people use them. And I would say that if you talk to Lisa, who was just up here, when we built these multi-use trails, we're probably thinking that people would bring their skateboards and their roller skates and their scooters and their e-scooters to these areas. They're definitely using them that way now. So if there's something we want to do about that, I would really advise us think about how we would draft language about that. We are building even more multi-use trails and trying to connect all of our sidewalks. So how people use them should mirror truly how they are actually using them. So e-bikes, in general, they're not specifically addressing municipal code because we didn't expect them. We didn't know about them when we drafted it. Again, they're regulated as bicycles. We don't have to do anything for how they're used on roads if you're okay with them being allowed on roadways. E-bikes on sidewalks, our code again is silent. They are prohibited unless authorized. So e-bikes are allowed on streets, not allowed on sidewalks unless you want to take action to allow them on sidewalks. And then obviously e-bikes on paths and greenways, again, our municipal code is silent. Class 1 and 2 are allowed, and Class 3 is restricted by state law. And so as we sit here today, e-bikes are allowed pretty much anywhere bikes are allowed, but you have the authority to make changes if you want. Class 3 e-bikes are not allowed on paths, sidewalks, greenways, but they are allowed on roadways. So here are some options. We can just leave everything the way it is and really do nothing. That means for play vehicles, e-bikes, and all of that, we can just do nothing. Everything remains as it is. We can think about enacting an e-bike ordinance. Maybe you guys saw Brentwood did that. They are allowing Class 1 and 2 on their trails. Class 3 obviously is prohibited. We can prohibit e-bikes on specific greenways and park paths. If we do that, we really have to think through strategically what that looks like and think about signing. So if a family is coming from one neighborhood into another neighborhood and then into a park, how will they know where they can be and they cannot be? And then finally, the last option is a comprehensive update, really thinking about modernizing the whole code. And if we do that, I mean, that could be something that we think about with our transit master plan and think about how we would work that out with Max and talk through that. So some suggested next steps, you can direct me to start working on an e-bike ordinance if that's something that you're looking at. We can review the parks and trails. We can start talking about that. We may want to have a public comment or a stakeholder meeting at some point to talk to people, one, probably parents, residents, and businesses locally to see how they want to see their sidewalks and streets used. And then we can look at a comprehensive code update. That's a lot of information, I know. A lot of this is included in your agenda. I'm going to sit down because when I turn it over to you guys to talk, I know you guys have thoughts, and I want to make sure I can capture all of those.
Alderman Brown, and then I'll get Alderman Berger after that.
Shauna, thank you not only for that, but for moving this forward. I think a lot of this, quite honestly, is education, and I really appreciate Chief and some of her team. They've tried to go out and do that in different neighborhoods, and obviously can't do that every single week. But part of the education is there are e-bikes and there's e-motos, and I will tell you, Julie and I were out walking the dog in Harlansdale, and we were passing the water treatment plant, and an e-moto, it was a motorbike, literally coming down the trail getting ready to cross the bridge, going way faster than 30 miles an hour, blowing right by us. And I just don't think parents know. I don't think they know the difference between an e-bike and an e-moto. And it's the same kid that I saw doing a wheelie down Hillsborough. I know exactly who this kid is, and I know this bike very well. And so I do think there's a difference between these. And I don't know what I assume it's very clear you can't ride those on sidewalks, and we probably would ticket, and I don't know what we would be doing. And I don't know how our officers can tell the difference. This one's pretty obvious, but I think that's part of the problem is you just see these kids flying around on these bikes. I don't think parents know the difference. I don't think residents know the difference. I'm sure from afar, I'm sure even our officers probably have trouble telling the difference. But part of it is not regulating e-bikes to the point that we're fighting e-motos with rules that hamper e-bikes, trying to fight we're trying to solve the wrong problem, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I want to be really careful that we don't over-regulate the e-bikes for the sake that we're trying to solve the other problem. But I will say, there isn't a day that goes by that there isn't a post somewhere in some social media about e-bikes, about the only thing that these kids don't have are Hell's Angels jackets, if you read the post. I mean, they are literally a nuisance every single place they go. So, and while trails may be one thing and roads, it's the sidewalks, it's the blowing through stop signs, it is just the not following, it's the courtesy that's missing. And I don't know how you police manners and courtesy and following laws. That's not regulating where you can put them. That's regulating common sense and respect and just good citizenry. I don't know how you regulate that based on where you can ride something. Because most of the comments that I see and most of the issues that I hear about, most of the calls that I get have nothing to do with whether or not you can put them on the street or a sidewalk. They have to do with people using them in the correct way, which is probably what Chief would tell you is a problem with cars and trucks and everything else that's out there. I do think we need to clean up a number of different things in there. As much as I'm sure it would take more time and effort, there are other things that probably need to be cleaned up. So I am for getting some stakeholder engagement. We do have some e-bike companies here in town that are pretty thoughtful, and I've had conversations with them. I do think getting some public comment. Ned has been a smart, advocate of these things. He's pretty thoughtful about it. I don't think we need to have an exhaustive, expensive process here, but I do think getting a couple people who can ensure that we protect the right things and that we're solving the problem we're trying to solve, I guess is my point.
Would you want to have that input public, or because I don't know if you remember, but we did the noise ordinance, and Eric and I held a meeting, just he and I, and brought people in, and it was more of an open dialogue. It wasn't, and then we reported back what we heard.
I think that's sufficient. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be a big process in public, not at all. No. I just think it's it's more complicated than is it on a sidewalk or on a road or whatever. And I think getting some people who are closer to it and represent those people would be really great to hear their voices in this.
That's right.
Alderman Berger.
All right. One of the big problems I've been having is the kids on these e-bikes that are on our residential streets, and they're going down the streets and they're weaving they're not going down the street in a straight path, they're weaving in and out, in and out. They will go up on somebody's driveway, they'll go down the sidewalk, they'll get back out into the street. This happens every day. I have that over and over and over and over. We got to regulate that. We have got to figure out how to stop that, because it's dangerous, because these kids they're going at a fairly decent speed. I've had to deal with them a number of times, and I drove into this one neighborhood where the street is fairly narrow. It's they've got parking on both sides, and it's difficult for people to get around, and they're weaving in and out of the cars, and then cars are coming. We have the perfect scenario for some really bad things to happen here, really bad, and the parents are very concerned with this. The citizens are very concerned with this. I hear this constantly. So I would like to, there's a fellow in my neighborhood who's very knowledgeable of this. I'd like him to be part of that group that comes in. I want to recommend him. I think the mayor was telling me today that he had somebody too that he thought would be very good in that group. I think 4 or 5 or 6 people in that group would be very helpful. And I want to make sure that maybe Matt has somebody too, and then Ned would probably be a good one to put in there. There are many different types, and as we said, different speeds, and we've got to start identifying how these can. It's an educational process for one thing. I think we've all agreed on that, but the citizens see this all the time. Our police officers. They can't be there. They can't be there, unfortunately, when the people are just screaming up and down Liberty Pike with high mufflers and all the unbelievable amount of noise that happens there at 7, 8, 9 p.m. at night. and I get calls at 7, 8, 9 p.m. at night. Did you hear that? Yeah, because I had to live on that street myself. And then another neighborhood over, our police officers can't always be there, and they're not going to be there. 90% of the time, they're not there because they're out doing their job, and they can't be sitting around waiting on that one person or two people to come by. And of course, the kids are out there doing this. Helmets, I really worry about the kids not having the helmets on. And then we also talked about skates. There are a couple little things here. We've got mom and dads with kids who are just learning to ride bikes, and they've got the training wheels on, but they've got to be on the sidewalk. They've got to be in the sidewalk. This is where they belong. And then we've got kids that are learning to skate, little kids at 5 and 6 years old with a pair of skates on. They're going to be on our sidewalks. This is where they belong. I know as a kid, that's everywhere I skated was on the sidewalk, up and down my neighborhood all the time. I don't want to restrict the ability for our kids to be kids, for our families to function. So I think we have to be really smart about how we approach all this. But, this day and age, we have things to contend with that we didn't have 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. We just have a different scenario with all these different technologies that are out there. We have to get this right for safety reasons. Number one, don't want to infringe on people's fun and things that people can do and kids can do and everything. But we got to get it right. And I think starting with that group would be very helpful.
Vice Mayor.
So I agree with Matt and or Alderman Brown and Alderman Berger on assembling this committee. I have a couple of interested citizens as well. I have no problem with the e-bikes, and I think we need to start delineating in our language. That's not what these kids are. Most of these kids are riding on. Those are e-motos, and we need to start using that language too, because if we conflate the two, we might, to y'all's point, over-regulate the thing that's not really what's the problem. There's this gentleman who rides through Pinkerton Park, and he has his e-bike. He's probably would not ride the distance he is riding without the e-bike, but it's great that he is. He's riding from across, anyway, long ways. And so he's not bothering anything. I mean, that's actually a good multimodal use of transportation. But I think we have to really look at the speeds and how we're going to arm the police officers with the ability to enforce this and do it effectively. So, but one question. Right now, if there is, because the things I hear about, it's not the e-bikes. I don't get complaints on e-bikes. I get complaints on e-motos. Although I do think we need to be able to regulate e-bikes because there's nothing there now, and there needs to be something because they can evolve. But right now, if there's someone under 16 and this is where I'm trying to understand enforcement and what's on the books now. An e-moto or a vehicle, and the person does not have to pedal, it's full throttled. If that's riding on a street today, they could be pulled over because you can't ride a motorized vehicle on the street that you can't pedal if you're under the age of licensure.
Right. You have to be if you're under the age of 16, that's right. And I need to check, but I think they also have to be registered. So they kind of are like a low speed vehicle, similar to golf carts. You can ride them on the street, but it's not like you can just take it and get it on the street. E-bikes are allowed on the street without licensure. Like you don't have to get like a license plate for it, but because it can go over 30 miles an hour.
Even if you don't have to get it licensed, but okay, so even if you don't have to register it doesn't matter. If you're riding a motorized vehicle on a street under the age of 16,
yeah,
you can't do that.
You can't do that.
One or two you can ride on the street.
No, this is e-bikes.
Yeah, he's saying full throttle.
Okay. Full throttle.
Yeah.
So I think that would be no pedal. These e-motos. Those are also not allowed on sidewalks.
Right.
Period. End of story.
It's not also allowed
Today.
on any of your trails or bike paths. And that's 100% in state law.
So this is where I'm kind of like, I feel like we've kind of gotten in a bit of a stalemate. Like enforcement is not really wanting to enforce. What can we enforce? What we don't do. Well, I'll tell you what. This is worth our time enforcing.
Yeah.
Because unlike a lot of things in this town, there will be a child that dies because of this if we do not take action on those E-motos. Alderman Brown's daughter was driving my kids in the car, and right in front of them, she babysits sometimes. But right in front of him, this kid, 10 years old, zips through the stop sign and hits a car. And he's probably 10, 12 years old. Wasn't pedaling, he was just throttling. That's not allowed today. I mean, hate it for the kid, like or I love it for the kid, he survived with very little injuries, but hate it that maybe the police officer should have given him a citation there on the spot that you were not supposed to be riding. That we're going to have to start enforcing this, and there are going to be some parents that are not happy about that, and I hate it. But like, I'm not going to sit up here and have a funeral in this town, and us have been kind of namby-pamby about enforcing what's already on the books. So I think that needs to be a larger discussion. And I could tell you in West Haven, in downtown, and the entire Ward 4, West Haven particularly, there are going to be people that don't like what I just said, but there's going to be a whole lot of people that do because they've seen the near misses. We're lucky we hadn't had a death. We are lucky we have not had a church full of people at a funeral today. And so we need to figure out how to enforce it, or I don't want that I told you so.
You're talking about e-motors.
Yeah, I'm talking about e-motos, not e-bikes.
That's what I've got.
E-bikes, that's going to be easy to solve.
Alderman Caesar, then Alderman Barnhill.
Patrick, I don't think you're wrong. The e-bike Class 1 and Class 2 probably follow most of the rules, and maybe it's the Class 3. So I think it's important we get language right, because a 28-mile-an-hour e-bike is very fast, and just because they're not pedaling when they hit the car in front of Matt's daughter doesn't mean it wasn't a Class 2 going 20. And I think it comes down to three things for me. It comes down to education. Most of these kids don't know, because who's educating them on what safety is? Now, if they buy from a reputable retailer, which I'm guessing most of them don't, unfortunately, they buy from a reputable retailer, they're getting some rules of the road safety. They're getting the bicycle adjusted properly so they can stop, and they know how the brakes work, and they know how fast it goes, and they know how they're supposed to respect cars. They probably even have something that I think is probably fundamentally one of the most important things that this overlooks. They probably have reflectors on their bikes. I've almost hit on three separate occasions. I drive slow in my neighborhood, 25 or less, for those following along at home. I've almost hit e-bikers 3 separate times in my neighborhood, not because I've been being reckless. They have zero reflectors on their bikes, and they're wearing black clothes. I don't know who told them, hey, ride a black bicycle at night in between stop signs and zip in and out of traffic in front of Mr. Caesar. He'll probably stop. Because, and if you feel passion in my voice, it's because it's real. I have a friend, not in this community, but a friend in the state of Oklahoma who lost his son because of one of these e-bikes. And to call it just the e-motos, the 20 to 28 miles an hour, if you hit something that's not moving like a mailbox, you might end up like my friend's son. So helmets are a must. We appreciate the state laws say 16 and over. Reflectors, I don't know if we can add this, but that to me seems like an obvious. If I drive my car down the road with my headlights off and my taillights off, I'm getting pulled over. I've not seen a kid in my neighborhood on an e-bike with, I should take that back. I've seen one kid that has a headlight. I don't think he has a tail light on his bike. Bev, can you imagine that kid that you referenced zipping in and out of driveways if they were driving a car doing that? Right. And so I worry about the safety of the drivers. I also worry about when we say we don't want to restrict them. I worry about the health of these folks who are using e-bikes, Class 1 and 2, and even Class 3. I love the fact that people are out, feeling the breeze in their face, getting a little bit of wind through their leg hair, not their hair on their head because they have a helmet. But I don't want to restrict folks from being able to go out and be in nature in a way, getting from point A to point B in a way that's other than just a car, with the doors shut and the windows up. but I don't want them driving by me while I'm walking my dog going 20 miles an hour on the sidewalk. I think about multi-use paths, and I think they're great for us to allow kids to roller skate. Man, Bev, you would have probably been arrested twice for roller skating up and down the streets. So I think we probably can revisit that. I do worry a little bit about roller skates and skateboards in public areas, because skateboards and rollerblades will sometimes damage park benches and things like that, curbs. So we just need to be intentional about where we do allow it. But I think we can revisit that and modernize that. I think the thing that we should really ask ourselves is, who is educating these people and who's responsible for educating these people? Matt, we can't regulate common courtesy, right, unfortunately, but you can institute regulations that allow people to make good decisions. And right now, unfortunately, it's a kid that's doing something that hasn't necessarily been told it's wrong by his parents, by a police officer, by a firefighter, or anybody. And for bicycle, we do bicycle safety courses. I believe, Chief, we instruct those a couple times a year, and we do it in partnership with Bike Walk Franklin. But there's nothing like that for e-bikes that's done at the civic level. We rely on some of our business retailers to do that, but I would love to see, and I don't know if we've already done this. I know I've spoken with city staff about this a number of times, but we shouldn't wait till July to do a training process for folks on e-bikes. We should do it under the current law, and then we should go back and retrain them again. But we need to be talking about safety. We need to be talking about reflectors. We need to be talking about, not blowing through sidewalks, or stop signs, not riding in the middle of the street at night wearing all black, even if you have a helmet on. And then the final piece that I think is worth us really considering is, if we're going to allow electronically propelled bicycles or scooters to operate on our sidewalks and our trails, which I think we should, all of them tell the rider in real time exactly how fast they're going. And if you look, there's good clinical studies that have evaluated how fast somebody can be run into by a bicycle and have a good chance of survival. And if you're below 15 miles an hour on that bicycle when you hit somebody, chances are good, not 100%, but 90%, that you're going to survive. And for that reason, I would put forward that we regulate e-bike speeds on multi-use paths or sidewalks to be at or below 13 miles an hour.
So some cities have said that in order to ride your e-bike on a sidewalk, you have to turn off the electric part and you have to pedal it. When you're on the sidewalk part, you pedal. When you go back down, so when you're getting from place A to place B,
sure.
If it's a smaller sidewalk, you bike it, and then when you're back on the road, you can turn it back on. Some people have said that. And class 3s are required to have a speedometer, but 1s and 2s probably don't.
See, we're learning every day. It's an interesting perspective. I'd love to hear what the board thinks about that, because I think, to me, I don't want to limit somebody that maybe doesn't have the strength in their legs to pedal on our sidewalks. I don't want to restrict them in a way that they can't use it to get from point A to point B. But I do want to protect Matt and his wife walking their dog from the guy going 30 miles an hour down the side. But that would be my request for us to think about, does the state authorize us not only to restrict or not restrict, but to put a speed limit on sidewalks for e-bikes and e-vehicles?
Yeah, I'll look into it. You may be able to do that since you can completely prohibit it. I just don't know how we regulate it. And
I think if nothing else, it says slow down person.
Yeah.
Right? And if you just say prohibited, then you're probably only going to keep out the people that'll follow the rules. And I think we've already established that many of these folks don't follow the rules.
Yeah, and I don't know if our police officers.
I don't want our police officers
Yeah.
sitting on the side of, Pinkerton Park
Yeah.
speed gunning bikers, but I think if nothing else, it reminds them that they're sharing the road,
Yeah.
right?
And we could do share the road signs too. A lot of bigger, communities that have multi-use paths have signs about that.
I wouldn't just want to say share the road. I'd want to give them a directive that says this is what share the road looks like.
Alderman Barnhill, I've got you.
My comment will be very brief. You mentioned a while ago that all of the bikes and whatever, they're supposed to follow the same rules and same regulations that a car does. So when they come to a stop sign, they're supposed to stop. But they don't.
Right.
They do not. And I don't suppose we do any enforcement on that. We may, I don't know whether we do or not, but they absolutely do not stop. And you don't, and we may be talking about a 12-year-old, we may be talking about a 60-year-old. The 60-year-old doesn't stop. He doesn't pay any attention. He just keeps on leaning over and turning right and heading on down the road. So if we're going to do all of this, we need to look at that this needs to be, this doesn't necessarily need to be geared towards e-bikes and someone that's 12 or 14 years old, even though I'm like you, I see them every day on the sidewalk, scoot down, coming out of the driveway, back down into the road, back up on the sidewalk. So I think we need to do something, and I do think it is a dangerous situation. I'm surprised we haven't had an accident of some sort that has been reported or something. We may have. I just haven't seen it any place. But yes, we need to look at that.
Alderman Potts, go ahead. I tried to start to say the last comment.
Didn't
but
clean
I
up?
don't think it is.
All right. I'll try to follow Alderman Barnhill's approach and be brief here. Motos probably definitely are at the top of the list that need to have the restrictions right there. I've already, and I do think that there are benefits. Alderman Baggett gave a good example. I've seen other good examples of e-bikes in use that are pedal driven that then utilize use electric motors. I will say that I've already reached out a couple of months ago, and then we've revisited this with Eric and with Chief Faulkner to do an education and enforcement program moving this forward. I've already had multiple HOAs in Ward 3 that have volunteered their clubhouses and their parking lots to hold these. So education first, in person with the FPD bike team. So Chief, thank you very much for helping to put that out on our radar. I was walking in the door today talking to another dad. Another idea was doing education on these e-bikes in the schools.
Yeah.
This is a brand new or renewed technology that needs to be revisited. And then as far as the enforcement goes, absolutely. Bike Walk Franklin's in full support of the enforcement aspect of the moto piece. And I will share with the group that I also sent out the slide deck to the 22 HOAs in Ward 3 that I partner with on a regular basis and asked them right out of the gate what their thoughts were. Unfortunately, our time was a little tight, so I didn't get back or hear from everybody, but everybody likes starting with baseline and option B. And but I do think that there is an opportunity here for more public input. And so however that proceeds forward, whatever your questions are, Shauna, I can certainly take those and then take these to these HOA leaders and ask them to review it with their boards and to provide some input as well. So that's a good start right there. I think hats off to Mayor Nelson Andrews and Brentwood City Commission for what they've already put forward. What I spoke to Eric and Chief Faulkner about aligned with what you see a lot of what's already been in place in that city. So that's where I would like to go. Alderman Berger, you have 30 seconds.
I don't know if they still have assemblies in schools, do they? But assemblies in schools need to be reinstituted if they don't have them, and this is a perfect place to do this. And the other thing is, I was just thinking back, when I was a kid, in our city, we had to have a bike license. If you did not have a bike license, we had to go down to City Hall and get a bike license. It was a couple dollars, and if we didn't, and we had to put them on our bikes. And if you didn't do that, I was riding with a kid one time who didn't have it, and they got stopped, and their parents got fined. That was in Ohio. And we had to have a bike license, and every bike was registered. And when kids lost their bikes, they knew who they belonged to, that's for sure. But anyway, that's old school, but maybe we need to bring some of that back.
We're adjourned. See you in 10 minutes.